Data engineering on Microsoft Azure DP-203 exam. Updated questions are the best material for you to pass the test easily. 1. You have an enterprise data warehouse in Azure Synapse Analytics. You need to monitor the data warehouse to identify whether you must scale up to a higher service level to accommodate the current workloads. Which is the best metric to monitor? More than one answer choice may achieve the goal. Select the best answer. A. Data 10%. B. CPU percentage. C. DWU used. D. DWU percentage. 2. You have an Azure Synapse Analytics Apache Spark pool named Pool 1. You plan to load JSON files from an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 container into the tables in Pool 1. The structure and data types vary by file. You need to load the files into the tables. The solution must maintain the source data types. What should you do? A. Use a get metadata activity in Azure Data Factory. B. Use a conditional split transformation in an Azure Synapse data flow. C. Load the data by using the OPEHROW set transact SQL command in an Azure Synapse Analytics serverless SQL pool. D. Load the data by using PySpark. 3. You plan to implement an Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage account. You need to ensure that the data lake will remain available if a data center fails in the primary Azure region. The solution must minimize costs. Which type of replication should you use for the storage account? A. Geo-redundant storage, GRS. B. Zone redundant storage, ZRS. C. Locally redundant storage, LRS. D. Geo-zone redundant storage, GZRS. 4. You are designing a highly available Azure Data Lake storage solution that will include Geo-zone redundant storage, GZRS. You need to monitor for replication delays that can affect the recovery point objective, RPO. What should you include in the monitoring solution? A. Availability. B. Average success E2E latency. C. 5xx. Server errors. D. Last sync time. 5. You have two Azure Data Factory instances named ADF Dev and ADF Prod. ADF Dev connects to an Azure DevOps Git repository. You publish changes from the main branch of the Git repository to ADF Dev. You need to deploy the artifacts from ADF Dev to ADF Prod. What should you do first? A. From ADF Dev, modify the Git configuration. B. From ADF Dev, create a linked service. C. From Azure DevOps, create a release pipeline. D. From Azure DevOps, update the main branch. 6. You are planning a solution to aggregate streaming data that originates in Apache Kafka and is output to Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. The developers who will implement the stream processing solution use Java. Which service should you recommend using to process the streaming data? A. Azure Data Factory. B. Azure Stream Analytics. C. Azure Databricks. D. Azure Event Hubs. 7. You have an Azure Data Lake storage account that has a virtual network service endpoint configured. You plan to use Azure Data Factory to extract data from the Data Lake storage account. The data will then be loaded to a data warehouse in Azure Synapse Analytics by using Polybase. Which authentication method should you use to access data lake storage? A. Shared access key authentication. B. Managed identity authentication. C. Account key authentication. D. Service principal authentication. 8. You are monitoring an Azure Stream Analytics job. The backlogged input events count has been 20 for the last hour. You need to reduce the backlogged input events count. What should you do? A. Drop late arriving events from the job. B. Add an Azure storage account to the job. C. Increase the streaming units for the job. D. Stop the job. 9. You have an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 container that contains 100 terabytes of data. You need to ensure that the data in the container is available for read workloads in a secondary region if an outage occurs in the primary region. The solution must minimize costs. Which type of data redundancy should you use? A. Zone Redundant Storage, ZRS. B. Read Access Geo-Redundant Storage, RAW-GRS. C. Locally Redundant Storage, LRS. D. Geo-Redundant Storage, GRS. 10. You are designing an Azure Stream Analytics job to process incoming events from sensors in retail environments. You need to process the events to produce a running average of shopper counts during the previous 15 minutes, calculated at 5-minute intervals. Which type of window should you use? A. Snapshot. B. Tumbling. C. Hopping. D. Sliding.